Admit it. The Strange Tale of Depsey the Rabbit. Chapter 9. The Debt Collection. The rehearsal space hummed with an efficiency that felt wrong, where there should have been creative chaos, scripts scattered across music stands, performers calling out line changes, the comfortable disorder of artistic collaboration. Instead, there was only mechanical precision. Oculus stood center stage beneath the harsh work lights, his 6 eyes moving independently as he recited his lines. 2 eyes tracked the script pages floating in midair around him. Another pair watched the blocking marks taped to the floor, and the final 2 followed Gus Grumworth's increasingly uncomfortable pacing in the director's section. "From the top of scene 3, Gus called, his voice carrying the authority of 20 years directing cartoon performers. But there was something strained in it today, a note Chuck would have recognized if he'd been there to hear it. The same tone their old elementary teacher used when she couldn't quite explain why the new student gave everyone the creeps. Oculus's response was immediate and perfect. No hesitation, no natural stumbles, no creative interpretation. Just flawless execution delivered in a voice that carried precisely the right emotional inflection without containing any actual emotion. "Certainly," Oculus said, his stalked eyes swiveling to focus on their new positions. "Beginning scene 3, mark 1. The eyes moved like a synchronized mechanical marvel, each pair tracking different elements of the performance space with surgical precision. The effect should have been impressive. Instead, it made Gus's fur stand on end in ways he couldn't articulate. The double doors to the rehearsal space exploded inward as Chuck and Lucy burst through, their urgent entrance shattering the sterile atmosphere like a rock through glass. "Oculus!" Chuck shouted, his yellow surface gleaming with perspiration. "You need to listen to us! You're in danger!" Gus spun around, his director's instincts flaring. "Excuse me? This is a closed rehearsal, one-on-one. You can't be here." The voice carried 20 years of theatrical authority, the kind of professional territorial protection that had kept countless well-meaning amateurs from disrupting his artistic process. He stepped between the intruders and his performer, arms crossed, whiskers bristling with indignation. "Mr. Grumworth, please," Lucy said, her porcelain features flushed with desperation. "We found a letter. Oculus received orders for a consultation with Dr. Dinglegreen today." "A medical consultation is hardly an emergency," Gus replied dismissively, though something in Lucy's tone made his ears twitch with unease. "Dr. Dinglegreen has been helping our performers reach new levels of excellence. Oculus has shown remarkable improvement since his enhancement procedures." Chuck's hands clenched into fists. "That's exactly what we're trying to warn you about. The cartoons who get those consultations, they disappear." Behind Gus, Oculus continued his blocking exercises, 4 eyes tracking the conversation while 2 remained focused on his scene marks. His voice carried across the space with that same mechanical perfection. "Dr. Dinglegreen has been most helpful in optimizing my performance capabilities. I am grateful for the consultation opportunity." The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they landed like ice water down Gus's spine. Dash, dash, dash. "Oculus!" Chuck pressed forward, trying to get around Gus's protective stance. "Don't you remember what you were like before? You used to make amazing mistakes, get excited about new ideas, argue with directors about character interpretation. Efficiency is preferable," Oculus replied without missing a beat in his blocking exercise. But somewhere quietly from one eye, and just for a second, Lucy could see pain and desperation. 2 eyes swiveled to regard Chuck with polite interest, while the others continued their independent tasks. "Dr. Dinglegreen helped me understand that artistic collaboration benefits from systematic optimization." Gus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Those words weren't wrong exactly, but they weren't right either. No performer he'd ever worked with talked about systematic optimization. They talked about finding the truth of a character, about discovering new ways to make audiences laugh or cry or think. Listen to yourself. Lucy stepped closer, her voice breaking with emotion. You're talking like a machine. Where's the performer who used to improvise entire scenes because you got inspired? Oculus responded, his tone remaining perfectly pleasant and completely empty. Dr. Dingle-Green's procedures have eliminated such inefficiencies. All 6 eyes turned to focus on Lucy simultaneously, and for a moment the effect was so alien, so fundamentally wrong, that Gus took an involuntary step backward. The thing standing on his stage looked like Oculus, moved like Oculus, but the soul behind those eyes had been methodically edited out. This is what we're trying to tell you, Chuck said, his voice rising with desperation. The enhancement procedures don't improve performers. They chain them up in their own bodies, and then they hollow them out. Gus found himself caught between his professional responsibilities and a growing horror he couldn't name. He'd noticed changes in Oculus over the past few weeks, improvements that had seemed miraculous at first. Perfect line delivery, flawless blocking, an ability to take direction without the usual creative push and pull that characterized working with talented performers. He'd thought it was artistic maturity. Now, watching those 6 eyes operate with mechanical precision, he realized it was something far worse. Chuck's hand moved toward his inner pocket, where Gus caught a glimpse of a small glass vial filled with dark liquid. Maybe if I show you what we've seen. Gus's professional instinct screamed danger. The conversation had careened past theatrical emergency into something that felt genuinely threatening. His performers, his space, his carefully maintained creative environment, all of it was under assault by forces he didn't understand. Enough! Gus's voice carried the full weight of his directorial authority. I don't know what kind of situation you two have gotten yourselves into, but I won't have it disrupting my rehearsal space. He moved toward the doors, gesturing firmly. You need to leave. Now. Whatever personal crisis you're dealing with, it doesn't belong here. Mr. Grumworth, please. Lucy tried one last time. Depsey is coming. Today. He's going to suggest that Oculus... I said enough. Gus positioned himself between his performer and the intruders, every protective instinct flaring. Oculus is under my professional supervision. I won't have you filling his head with paranoid fantasies. But even as he said it, Gus couldn't shake the image of those 6 eyes moving independently. The mechanical precision of responses that should have been creative. The complete absence of artistic passion in a performer who used to practically vibrate with creative energy. Security, he called toward the intercom system. I need an escort to the main entrance. Chuck made one final desperate attempt, calling over Gus's shoulder. Oculus, remember who you used to be. Don't let them get to you. For just a moment, less than a heartbeat, something flickered behind those 6 eyes. A brief sadness. But then the programming reasserted itself, and Oculus returned to his blocking exercises with mechanical perfection. I am optimally configured for my current performance parameters, he said pleasantly. Additional variables would compromise delivery quality. 2 studio security guards appeared at the doors, their presence adding official weight to Gus's authority. Escort these 2 to the main entrance, he instructed. They're not to return to the rehearsal spaces. This is a mistake, Chuck said as the guards moved to flank him and Lucy. When Depsey arrives, when he... I'll manage my performers, thank you very much, Gus replied, but his voice carried less conviction than his words. The studio has protocols for dealing with unstable individuals. As the security guards guided Chuck and Lucy toward the exit, the chatterbox made one final plea. At least watch him closely. When our friend arrives, just pay attention." The doors closed behind them with institutional finality, leaving Gus alone with his enhanced performer. The rehearsal space settled back into its unnatural quiet, broken only by the sound of Oculus continuing his exercises with unwavering mechanical precision. Gus tried to return his attention to the script, but he couldn't shake the memory of those 6 eyes operating independently, or the way Oculus had talked about systematic optimization instead of artistic truth. Maybe the young performers had been paranoid, but their desperation had felt genuine. And the way they'd talked about Depsey. They all had been worried about him, but this was taking it too far for Grumworth. Through the rehearsal space's large windows, Gus caught sight of a familiar figure approaching across the studio lot. Yellow Shoes moved with characteristic energy toward the building, their owner whistling a cheerful tune that carried even through the glass. Depsey the rabbit, the studio's biggest star, was heading directly for the rehearsal space. The Yellow Shoes drew closer, and despite himself, Gus felt his stomach tighten with an anxiety he couldn't explain. Dash, dash, dash. Outside the building, Chuck and Lucy stood on the sidewalk as the security guards returned to their posts. The autumn air felt cold against Chuck's yellow surface, though he couldn't tell if the chill came from the weather or from the knowledge of what was about to happen. "We failed," he said simply. Lucy's porcelain hand found his arm. "We tried. That has to count for something." Through the rehearsal space windows, they could see Gus returning to his director's position, script in hand. Oculus continued his blocking exercises, those 6 eyes moving with alien precision. And walking across the lot with characteristic bounce, Yellow Shoes gleaming in the afternoon sun, came their oldest friend. "Should we call Detective Bones?" Lucy asked. Chuck shook his head. "By the time he could get here, it'll be over. And what could he do anyway? Arrest Depsey for suggesting a hike?" They stood in helpless silence, watching through the windows as Depsey approached the rehearsal space doors. His cheerful whistle carried across the lot, the same melody he'd been humming since they were children. The sound that used to mean safety and friendship now felt like a funeral dirge. "Admit it," Chuck whispered, the words escaping before he could stop them. "We always knew something was wrong with him." Lucy squeezed his arm tighter. "No, we knew something was wrong around him. That's different." The Yellow Shoes disappeared from view as Depsey entered the building, heading directly for the rehearsal space, where an enhanced performer waited with mechanical obedience for whatever suggestion might come. Chuck and Lucy remained on the sidewalk, witnesses to a tragedy they couldn't prevent, watching the windows for any sign of what was happening inside. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the studio lot, and in those shadows, it was easy to imagine other watchers, other eyes, other forces that fed on the corruption of innocence. The blood money was being collected, one friendship at a time, and all they could do was watch.